Let's talk about this article here first before we kind of dive into the specifics of the Echo stuff, because this is absolutely related to it. I'm going to kind of speed read through this, and then I want to get everybody's thoughts. For the last 20 years, this is an open letter from a Hollywood professional to Film Threat, working as a screenwriter. They've sat on hundreds of meetings. They have been with many of Hollywood's biggest people. And now where we've reached, and I want people to understand how deep the infection, the cancer has gone into Hollywood. Suddenly, subtext and themes have become the main point of discussing a project or IP. The first question in every meeting became, what can we say with this project? Or, quote, what can we teach people with the story? Plot, character, and audience were now secondary. Sometimes in these writers' meetings, they were not even discussed. New executives were not savvy, not business-minded executives. They were young, no track record, and I'm going to add the participation trophy generation. If you watch the podcast I did with Alan Ng yesterday, this is not systematic of just Hollywood. This is systematic of a poorly raised generation, a participation trophy generation, with no track record or comprehension of the bottom line, meaning money, right? Disney's going to give you money, spend whatever you want, make the same thing we made with all these other projects, but it's representative. When the streaming war started, the money was turned on from the hose. Those experienced executives started relying on these young guns to pick up the slack, but the kids were less focused on the hero's journey and more concerned with taking down the patriarchy.
Winning recipe.
Yeah. At one point, his agent told him they couldn't put me up, the writer of this article, they could not put me up for any open writing assignments or TV jobs because the executives of the studios in Hollywood only wanted to hear takes on the material from BIPOC or female or LGBTQ writers. Some shows even started instituting staffing quotas that 40 to 50% of the writing staff had to be people of color. Okay? I know many showrunners who hate this, not because they didn't want to hire new writers and foster them. They didn't want half their staff coming from a pool of young, inexperienced writers who knew nothing about working in a writer's room, production, post, or deadlines. Is this illegal? Probably, but hey, I'm not an attorney. And hey, there's no way to find out anyway, because if you ask questions about this, you'll be labeled a racist by the studios or called out for your white male privilege. If you so much as raise an eyebrow, there's a risk you'll never work again. And that's why this article is anonymous. Ron, would you have any thoughts on that as an attorney?
Yes. This is not attorney advertising, but if it were, I might say that if someone is aware of not having gotten an opportunity of an agent who actually said something to him, our main office is in California. I'd love to hear from you. This is against the law. It was against the law even before the affirmative action decision of last year. It's crazy. It's crazy. Discrimination. I mean, it is true that when affirmative action was legal, these were much harder cases to prove and win. But this is, it's not so different from what we have been talking about for the last few months.
What concerns me, though, is that, this kind of attitude, and this is what's going to be interesting with Hollywood in the very, I think, near future, perhaps this year in 2024. And you and I have talked about this before on live shows. The gist of this article, and there's more. I mean, that's scratching the surface. I'll bring it back up because I was trying to reset something and something goofed. But we had a Supreme Court decision here not long ago that said, no, Harvard, you cannot racially discriminate, no matter what it is, in your process for accepting applicants to be students at your university. And there was language, if I'm not mistaken, Ron, in that ruling that said that it seemed that they made strong suggestions that this would go down the line to everything else, including corporate America's hiring practices. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I again, this is illegal discrimination. There's always been this great ambiguity between the legality of affirmative action and unlawful discrimination against people who were not eligible for affirmative action, a consideration.
Mm-hmm.
Technically, it has always been against the law to discriminate against someone for being white, for being male, for being heterosexual. But those cases have had a hard time in the courts. The standard of proof is tricky.
Mm-hmm.
It's universally described as reverse discrimination, even though it's really just discrimination. Someone somewhere is going to file that lawsuit, and if this kind of, the kind of documents that you showed on the video in your discussion,
technical issues, folks, technical issues.
Can y'all still hear me? I don't know what's
Yeah,
going on.
we hear you.
Okay.
But Ron, it's your stream. Your video stream is the one that's glitchy.
So I'm gonna check it out.
So I would suggest maybe killing the camera and letting the audio come through.
That might work.
Well, let me check it out.
Rebooting. Yeah,
Yeah.
Let's do that.
While
that
Ron's
might
doing
work.
that, let me interject this, because not only is it legally ridiculous to do this, it's also pragmatically, it's also functionally stupid. And I'm going to give you an example that everybody out there can use now when you're mocking Hollywood, because you all know this is dumb. You feel it intrinsically.
Mm-hmm.
But here's how you can put this into words. Imagine for a moment that you are at Widgets R Us and you're selling your widgets as hard as you can. And let's say that somebody comes to you and says, we need to hire more people for aisles 13 through 37 of the widget store. And you say, good, I've been wanting more people to work in those aisles. And then the district manager says to you, but I only want you to hire people who are demisexual and pansexual. Now, exactly. The response that you just had, Valiant, is the response that any sane thinking person in Hollywood should have thought. You're trying to sell widgets, darn it.
And that's what is on this type of pablum with some of these Hollywood types. I mean, no institution, according to this article, reinforces this more than the Writers Guild. One glance at their monthly calendar of events shows a Latinx, which is a stupid term that doesn't exist, Writers Committee meeting, an LGBTQ plus Writers Committee meeting, a Committee of Black Writers meeting, a Middle Eastern Writers Committee meeting, a women's Writers Committee meeting, and
where's the Ginger Club?
Yeah, an Asian American Writers Committee meeting, just to name a few.
Wait a minute, I don't see gingers on here. What are you, Valiant? Wait a minute, where are the gingers?
What's this?
First of all, no wonder they don't get anything done.
Can you imagine if there was a white writers meeting? So this is next line. But look at this. Wait, Lorena, look at this. This is the chart he was talking about when you apply. This is actually a screenshot where he talks about you have one checkbox if you're white and straight. There are 6 things for LGBTQ, multiple things for trans, and look at how many disability checkboxes there are to apply for a job.
Why isn't coffee addiction on here as a disability?
Yeah, really.
Listen, I think you should select every one of them when you apply. Every single one of them should be selected. Your chances skyrocket.
I totally would.
Does neurodiverse include ADHD?
I would imagine so, yeah.
Yes.
That'll be my excuse for why I selected them all, by the way, Ron.
I'm fine with it then.
It was the ADHD that made me pick every one of them. I couldn't stop.
Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.